Today, we're taking a look at a PC that I built a few months ago. I actually sold this to someone on Facebook Marketplace, and unfortunately, they're having some issues with some of their games, so let's jump in and see if we can figure out what's going on. This is an AM4 platform PC with a Ryzen 5 5600T. It also has an RTX 2080 Ti. And basically what's happening is when the customer plays Fortnite, it is crashing to a black screen, and they have to hold down the power button to force a shutdown and then power it back up. And sometimes it comes up and sometimes it doesn't. So I don't think this is a hardware issue. I think it's more of a software issue. But either way, we're going to jump in, see what we can figure out, and see if we can get it fixed. First, I want to install some fresh NVIDIA drivers, and then we can jump into a game of Fortnite and see if we can figure out what's going on. And after we jump into Fortnite, we can see immediately that some textures are missing, so we'll play a few games and see if we can recreate the issue. We completed one game with no crashes, so we'll just jump into another one and see if we have any issues. And the texture's finally loaded back in, so I'm just going to adjust some other video settings just to see if I can trigger any issues, but so far it seems to be running smooth with fresh NVIDIA drivers. So one thing I forgot to mention previously is that this customer actually had issues about a month ago with a different game, and I think their Windows install is just kind of corrupted and is having some issues. So we're just going to start completely fresh by wiping the drive entirely. We're going to do a fresh install of Windows 11. I'm going to go through every step that I do after I set up a new PC with Windows 11, and then we're going to run stress tests to see if the GPU needs to be repasted and some fresh thermal pads applied, or if it's good to go, and then we'll go from there. So after I've got Windows 11 installed, I like to do this Shift F10 process just so I don't have to use a Microsoft account. This basically allows you to enter in a command to bypass the network requirements so you can use a local account. And then once I'm in Windows, the first thing I always do is just check for Windows updates and let those complete and set the time to the correct time zone. And after that, we'll install a few other pieces of software, including the AMD drivers, the NVIDIA drivers, and everything that we need. And then we will go from there. First, we're going to adjust the NVIDIA control panel to basically prefer maximum performance. Then we're using a 99.com silent install to get some common apps installed without us having to manually do that. Then I'm using Chris Titus Tech's PowerShell tool that he built. He's a YouTuber and software developer. And this tool basically allows you to turn off some services that you don't really need and kind of de-bloat Windows to kind of give you a fresh start and to just kind of have less stuff running in the background, less stuff collecting data and sending things off and using resources that shouldn't be being used. So I'm going to run those. And then also I noticed there's a new version of the BIOS, so I've downloaded that so we can do a BIOS update. Once that reboots, we'll then get into the BIOS to turn on XMP for the RAM. We'll also make sure resizable bar and secure boot is enabled. And then once all that's good to go, we'll finally get back into Windows 11. Then we can download our stress testing software and stress test our CPU and GPU just to check our temperatures and stability. And then we can go from there and see what else we need to do. So I know I kind of blasted through that last section pretty quickly, but if you want me to make a separate video where I go into that stuff kind of in depth, definitely let me know. But now that we're back in Windows or running a stress test, we can see that the GPU hotspot temp is getting above 90C, which I'm not really comfortable with. So we're going to remove the 2080 Ti, break it down. We're going to repaste it and then run it again and see if we get any better results. So even with fresh thermal paste and Gigabyte software to set a custom fan curve, it's still getting close to 90C. So let's go ahead and open this back up and replace the thermal pads as well and see if we can get those temps down. I'm not really sure how this one slipped through, and I didn't repaste this when I originally had it. But now that we've got that fixed, the temperatures are manageable again. They're within where I like to see them. And when we play games, we're getting smooth temperatures, smooth frame rates. We're not having any issues at all. And I didn't get a lot of other footage because I really wanted to get this PC back to the customer. But I'm glad we got it fixed. I'm glad it wasn't anything major. And this should solve all their issues. I think with a fresh Windows install and fresh thermal paste and thermal pads on the GPU, this PC should be good to go for a long time. So I just kind of wanted to go through the troubleshooting steps on how I look at this stuff and then kind of how I set up Windows. I know I didn't really do a super in-depth one because I didn't get a lot of good footage. I was kind of on a short timeline with this project, so I want to get it back to them so they weren't without a PC. But if you want to see me make a longer form video on that stuff, definitely let me know. And I appreciate everyone else tuning in. I've got some other videos coming pretty soon. And thanks again for watching. I will see you in the next one.